Good morning, everybody. Good morning, committee members. Welcome to 833 Planning and Environment Committee. Councillor Vorster, how are you today?
I'm good, a bit fired up about fire ants, but I'm good. I'm glad that you and I got the same memo on clothing, which is good.
It's all right there. It was a very good live cross this morning, I thought.
Did you like it?
I did. Councillor Owen-Jones, how are you today?
Chair, I think I'm okay.
You're okay?
I'm a bit disappointed with a couple of things, but I think I'm okay.
Councillor O'Neill, how are you?
Ditto, I'm fine.
Very good.
Okay.
Councillor Peter Young, yourself?
Yeah, good morning and congratulations on your appointment, Councillor. Looking forward to working with you in this role and I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you. And joining us today as visitors, Councillor Patterson, how are you?
Good morning, very well. And I'm sure I got more sleep than you, Councillor Hamill. And congratulations on your newborn. Very excited.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Councillor Bowden Lumsden, good morning to you.
Oh, much the same. I'm going all right, can't complain, but got to congratulate you as well, Chair. Congratulations on the new role and on the new bub.
Right, thank you very much for that, and good morning to all our city officers and support staff here today. We'll kick into things, so attendance apology.
Who's Tanya?
How's Tanya?
Could I just welcome Tanya as well?
Tanya,
And
yes,
congratulate her.
sure. Tanya, William, Matthew, the three people watching the live stream, good to see you. Okay, so we'll kick off attendance apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Donna Gates and Councillor Pauline Young, and we're removing Councillor Caldwell. So do I have a mover for those apologies? Councillor Peter Young, seconded Councillor Owen-Jones, all in favour? That's carried. Councillor Patterson, you don't vote on this one, but thank you for your vote anyway. Leave of absence is nil. Confirmation of the minutes. Do I have everyone happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? Cool, so mover Councillor O'Neill, seconder for the minutes. Councillor Peter Young, thank you. All those in favour? Very good, that's the minutes passed. Ladies and gents, all items have a star against them at the moment. Can I get an indication of which ones we'd like to speak on? Councillor Vorster?
Item 6.4 regarding the future of Robina. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Owen-Jones?
6.2, so I can vote against it.
Very good. Councillor O'Neill?
6.1, thanks.
I've got a funny feeling I know where this is going. Councillor Patterson?
6.3, thank you.
6.3. So that would leave...
Always independent you, hey, Councillor Young?
Okay, and we need to unstar 6.6 because we're going to have the presentation as part of that and the recommendation to move there.
So if we dealt with 6.5 now, Mr Chair, the officers could leave. And
All right, so
I'll second it.
Okay, yeah, who's chairing this meeting?
Yeah, to release the officers, and if you'll accept it, I'll move item 6.5 recommendation.
Right, is there any questions to it? Just want to move it.
No, it's a great outcome.
Okay, I'm happy with that, so we'll jump to 6.5. Moved by Councillor Peter Young, seconded Councillor Owen-Jones. Councillor Young, to open.
Well, this reflects a discrepancy that was picked up in the mapping process, and it's a quick return now, a report to us that identifies a procedure to hopefully ensure that that kind of error doesn't enter into the process again in the future, and I'm grateful for it. Thanks, Chair.
Anyone else wish to speak on 6.5? In that case, we'll take the vote. All those in favour? 6.5 is passed. Thank you, officers. Thumbs up from the back. Okay, now we'll go back to normal proceedings. So we are going to do it out of order. So we're going to go to 6.6 first. Presentation?
If you like, yes, certainly.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll do it at the same time. So we'll be presenting 6.6 with 6.1 as it relates to one development, but the resolution, I believe, it will pass to 6.6 first before 6.1. All right. Yes, thanks, Councillor. So, sorry, I should introduce myself first. I'm Scott, and I'm here to present 6.1 and 6.6, which, as I said, both relate to one development, which is for multiple dwellings and short-term accommodation at 39 and 41 McLean Street. I think I've got my click here. Yeah, so to reiterate, I'm presenting both items, but as I said, we'll be resolving item 6.6 before we resolve item 6.1. To clear, it's a material change of use for impact accessible development for multiple dwellings and short-term accommodation for 58 units. The application has triggered impact assessment due to the proposed building height. The proposed building, the building height designation is 38 metres. The building height designation for the site is 39 metres, while the development presents a maximum building height of 55.5 metres. This is the proposal here. You can see this is a perspective taken from McLean Street and Musgrave sort of corner. It presents a code accessible land use, but due to the building height, it is triggered impact accessible. It includes a mixture of 2 and 3 bedroom units varying layouts within the 17-storey tower. It'll be supported by a 3-level basement, communal open space areas located on levels 2, 16 and 17, which total 302 square metres. Development will be accessible via a double crossover from Musgrave Street and provide 59 residential car parking spaces. That's obviously 1 per unit, with the exception of the uppermost unit, which will have 2 car parking spaces allocated to it. There will be 6 visitor car parking spaces. This outcome meets the acceptable outcome for the transport code for multiple dwellings and short-term accommodation land uses within the centre zone. The podium level presents site cover of 77%, and the podium has 77%, and the tower is 53%. The proposed density is 1 bed per 6.7 square metres. The setbacks vary across the levels, however, provide a built-to-boundary podium and ground level interface before the tower moves back to 1.6 from the street. The sides present generally 4 metre setbacks to both sides and 3.5 metres to the rear. The proposed short-term accommodation land use applies to all 58 units, providing future unit owners with the ability to lawfully rent these units to holiday makers through Airbnb and those sorts of avenues. The subject site, as I said, is included within the centre zone, has a building height designation of 39 metres. It's comprising of 2 lots, which you can see there, 39 and 41 McLean Street, totalling 984 square metres. Has an angulated frontage of 29 metres. It's generally flat and vacant, with the exception of the singular building there, which is currently being used as a sales office for a nearby development. There's an existing easement that extends along the western and southern boundaries, presenting a 3.5 metre width, and that provides access to car parking spaces located at the property located to the rear, 22 Garrick Street. So you can see the subject site here within these slides, give you a bit of an overview of the site. You can see that sales office there at the front, and that easement where it's free of fencing is currently located. Looking more broadly to the local area and the zoning, as I said, the zoning is in the centre zone. It's right on the sort of edge of the core area of Coolangatta, which is one of our major centres within the centre hierarchy. Medium density residential extends to the west, and obviously we've got the Coolangatta beachfront and Kira Hill further north. Directly adjoining the site to the north is a vacant lot. However, there is a current live DA on that site. The site to the south is a single-storey medical centre. The development to the rear, which is to the west, includes a 4-storey walk-up older style development, and to the east is the core area of the Coolangatta Centre. So, councillors, I've got some perspectives here for you to view. They're obviously within your application, sorry, the committee report as well. But you can see the development here, which, as it is an uplift test, we've got to look at the excellent standard of appearance, and you can see through this perspective that there's some really clear defined balcony edges, that centralised recess, and varied building colours to break up that length of the building and achieve that excellent standard of appearance. This is continued onto the other side, and you can see here that the podium level of the proposed development matches the existing podium throughout the street, and reflecting the intent of that centre zone. This is a bit of a more zoomed-in version of that podium, where it also includes varied building materials, some additional some landscaping to soften that built form and also link up with the streetscape character, and presenting quite an inviting space to walk through and stuff. This is a perspective taken from Kira Hill, and you can see the development identified there through the annotation, and shows how it sits comfortably within the local context of Coolangatta. Councillors, we've got the basement levels there. You can see it's all 59 car parking spaces, and 3 of those visitor spaces are located in the basement. The ground level includes the 3 other visitor car parking spaces and those access arrangements and pedestrian entranceway to the north of the site. The levels 2 and 3 present differing floor layouts to the typical floor level, which is shown here across levels 4 to 15. So it includes those 3-bedroom units located at the front and the 2-bedroom units located at the rear. As I said at the start, the proposal includes a communal open space area at the top on level 16 with a pool and a gym and sauna and 2 other units. The penthouse suite is located on the level 17 with an additional area of communal open space. The section plan here demonstrates the proposed building height being at 55.5 metres. It shows the breakdown of the unit's typology and basement levels, and also highlights the step down top 2 levels, which provide a distinct and varied building presentation. So in relation to the building height, as I said, it's in the centre zone, which developments within the centre zone are eligible to apply for an increased building height, provided it meets the 9 uplift provisions and other specific outcomes relating to building height. Unlike developments within the medium density residential zone, for example, there are no limitations to the maximum building height that the applicant can propose when they're located within the centre. However, there's specific outcomes within the strategic framework relating to those increases in height to ensure that the proposed height reinforces the local identity, provide a clear delineation between areas of the centre zone that present varying building heights within the building height map to support centre legibility. We can see within the image that's before us that there's a varying building height throughout the locality, with that core centre of Coolangatta presenting 84 and 86 metre high buildings, and this one is 55.5, so it provides a stepping down from that core area to provide that centre legibility. This is also explained within this other transect of the of Coolangatta, and shows that sort of tapering down at the edges, which this development sits comfortably within achieving that. It's also consistent with the existing property to the north, which is Blue Sea, located on the corner of McLean Street and Marine Parade, which presents a building height of 53 metres. So the proposed application of 55 metres is quite reflective in supporting that existing character along McLean Street. The submissions received for the application were 8. They're all properly made and all objecting to the proposed development. They raised the following concerns: that they didn't believe it was meeting the excellent standard of appearance, but impacts to the views and things, damage to the environment, the building height and the bulk and density, and the conflicts with the local character, a shadow, additional traffic impacts, communal open space, setbacks to the north, and the little street activation. However, through revised discussions with the applicant, I believe it has resolved a lot of those concerns, and it is presenting an excellent standard of appearance and reinforcing that local character, providing a legible centre. So, yeah.
So on page 155 of the report, one of the submitters appears to be the adjacent property. What were their objections? Are they on that list there, or are they separate?
Yes, certainly are. Councillor, sorry, through the chair, they raised that they like the setbacks to the north, since that submission, that they have been increased to around 4 metres to provide a clear separation between the 2 buildings, which results in proposed...
But they weren't complaining about height or density or bulk, were they?
No, they weren't. They believed that there was little street activation as well. That was their other concern.
Okay,
but,
thank you.
It was a setback to the north.
Sorry, Scott, just since you raised it, but could I get an understanding of what you thought they meant by little street activation?
Yeah, so the neighbouring property to the north is a multiple land use development, which includes a number of commercial tenancies and those sorts of things, and a heritage facade building, so it has a great presentation of the street. So the applicant, so the submitter, was raising that they believe that this proposed development is inferior, but it is a completely different development and design. And the podium level, we believe, has got a great presentation with the street. It's got an inviting glass front and varied building materials to achieve that excellent standard of appearance.
Did you have much more presentation?
No, that's it.
That was it. Questions? I just have one question, and that's just about, and I know there's been a traffic assessment done, because the crossover is Musgrave Street, so I'm just want some advice about whether it was considered the distance between where the pedestrian crossing is and where people will turn right, where they're coming out of Maclean and then turning right into the basement level. Has that been assessed?
Yeah, it certainly has. Sorry, through the chair again, Councillor O'Neill. Yeah, it certainly has. The entrance to the proposed development is before that pedestrian crossing, and there's a significant sight distance and clear sight distance to that pedestrian crossing. So there really shouldn't be any conflict with pedestrian movement and vehicle movement.
Thank you. I'm happy to pose that and talk to it.
Any other questions? Councillor Peter-Young?
Thanks, Chairman. I'll be a bit bold. I don't think I've ever seen one of these proposals that seeks the uplift provisions where it has been assessed not to have met all of the criteria necessary to earn the uplift. And I think that's always a point of subjective assessment rather than a science. In this report, it does talk about the community benefit provision on page 133, and it notes that there's we do have guidance on what might constitute additional community benefits, and a development is not required to incorporate community benefits, but I wonder if we could actually apply a community benefit and say, you have to put in an extra $1,000 per dwelling for a community benefit in the local area, and we will consider that appropriate. So it's kind of turning things around. They're not seeking it, but we could apply it. What do you think? Through your chair.
Yes, through the chair, I believe that is an optional assessment benchmark, which the applicant obviously, as you noted, hasn't taken up. I don't believe there's any ability to enforce that upon the applicant. That's my understanding of that assessment benchmark.
Sorry, you were saying it wouldn't be, or would be?
Wouldn't be, no. We wouldn't be able to enforce that upon the applicant. It is an entirely sort of a voluntary process.
Scott, could I clarify, please? So just in regards to Councillor Young's questions about the outcomes for the uplift, which outcome haven't they met?
I don't believe that they haven't met an outcome.
So that you've confused me there, Councillor Young. Which uplift provision?
I was saying that I've never seen one of these assessments where it tells us that they haven't met one of the criteria. And in this case, obviously, the officers are saying they've met all the criteria. And I believe that's always a subjective assessment rather than science. So I might disagree with the fact that...
Forgive me, forgive me, that makes sense. Through you... Sorry, does someone else want to have a go at one of those questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just coming to clarify if you were discussing those community benefit provisions, Councillor, they don't actually form part of the uplift test provisions. That's within the overall outcomes in relation to density. Yep.
Sorry, Scott, could you just clarify for me? I know it's in the report, but just in the section on the issues raised by submitters and the setbacks to the north,
yes.
Can you just run through what was the original proposed setback and what is the final setback that we've got?
Yeah, it was 3.2 metres was the originally proposed setback, but now we're getting predominantly 4 metres. The recess centres do present around 3.5, but that's just to get the delineation that there is a recess there, that's a very minor sort of encroachment.
Sorry, and in the same light, Scott, in regards to the communal open space, it just notes that officers agreed with the submitter on this one. Could you just run through what the original proposal was and what the end outcome that we're voting on today is?
Yeah, so the original proposal was very light on in communal open space areas. They only really had that pool area and that lounge area, but they've increased that space. They've removed one of the units to include an additional communal open space area that has a work from home sort of studio and an additional balcony and recreational space that they can sit around and lounge. So that was provided through a further IR.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Vorst, a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we're in quite an unusual situation here with the supplementary. I I gather there is no way of supporting 6.1 without supporting 6.6. Is that correct?
Well, yes, that's correct. That's, through the chair, yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Okay, so I could support 6.1, but in supporting 6.6, I can't really vote for 6.1. Would that be fair?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, we're replacing the recommendation within 6.1 with 6.6. So it's, yeah, I guess what you're getting at there, Councillor Walser, is that, yeah, we're only supporting 6.6.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so I have Councillor O'Neill.
Mover, do I have a seconder for this one? Councillor Owen-Jones. Councillor O'Neill to open.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Look, this is a really important development for Coolangatta. It's probably, well, I know, it's the first high-rise development to be applied for within the centre zone for probably more than 10 years. So the supplementary agenda about short-term accommodation is actually quite important for Coolangatta. We actually lack short-term accommodation in Coolangatta, which is a tourism centre. I was very happy that the developers and the planners for the applicants chose to remove 2 storeys, because I think the positioning of this development being on the fringe of the centre zone and the medium density area, again, very important for Coolangatta as a city centre. I'm very happy with the changes they made. I'm very happy that they listened to the submitters and made those changes, and I couldn't envisage in that area a higher than 55.5. And we've been over this quite a bit. I know there's a lot of, I think the last development in Coolangatta was Sanbano, was probably 86 metres, and that's along Marine Parade. But this area here, 55.5, I think, is the actual tops that I could envisage for that street, McLean Street. It's a very constrained area at the end of Griffith Street, which is the main street in Coolangatta. As I said, I'm very happy, and I hope that more developers just listen to our planners, city planners. When they ask them to reduce height, it's for a reason, and this reason was very evident here. So I'm more than happy to propose this.
Mr Chairman, could I just ask one final question?
Yes, Councillor.
So I'm reasonably persuaded by Councillor O'Neill's contribution, and as the local council, it's always great to defer to her. I just had a question about the eastern relief on the building. We saw it with that little tunnel sort of thing. I'm not sure if we can bring up that slide, but so I had a development in Burleigh Waters go up with a podium like that and a big extensive wall, and became a massive magnet for graffiti. And I just wondered if city officers could advise whether there are any conditions that we have placed on the maintenance of that quote-unquote blank canvas as a graffiti-free space, because my worry would be that that would be subject to ongoing vandalism, noting that we've got, is it a car park or an undeveloped site?
Undeveloped site at the moment, with an application in.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, do we have any conditions to ensure that that wall maintains its nice appearance while we wait for development to proceed at the adjacent site?
Through the chair, Councillor Walser, we don't have any specific conditions in relation to that, but as you rightly pointed out, we do have a development application that sits over that adjacent site that will be built up to that boundary, and preventing any graffiti from occurring in the future. But the existing site is fenced off. There's been no graffiti to the other site further to the north. If that relieves that concern.
Mr Chairman, through you to Councillor O'Neill, is there the likelihood that, I mean, being in new sites, they're going to look after it, they're going to paint it, but you know, developments can also not proceed, and there's no guarantee that the one next door will occur.
No.
Do you think it's something worth managing?
Look, graffiti happens everywhere.
Yes.
And it certainly happens in centre of Coolangatta, I know that. So I'm happy if we can condition that they maintain it to this level at all times.
Yeah, certainly. So just confer with my line leaders there. We do have some conditions within our suite package that speak to graffiti-free paint. so we could apply that type of condition. So,
Maybe between now and full council, if we could just add that condition. I mean, it's people, when they raised objections, as Councillor Jones said, they talked about that street level activation. And it would be just a pity to create this blank canvas, which actually degrades that street level activation rather than improves it.
yeah, certainly would agree.
Thanks.
Right, anyone else looking to speak on this one? So I'm just going to speak in favour of it very quickly and say that it's brilliant to see, as Councillor O'Neill said, some new tourism accommodation product in the deep south of the city. In several conversations with Councillor O'Neill, she's always raised it as an issue that we continue to have bigger events down Coolangatta Way, and that accommodation providers are always solidly booked out and that we needed more of this product, so that's really good to see. I really wanted to make the point too that it's very obvious in the response to the submitters' issues raised that there has been a lot of negotiation between officers and the applicant on this one. We've seen a reduction in height, we've seen an increase in communal open space, we've seen an increase in setbacks on some boundaries. We've seen a lot of work done in terms of the built form appearance. So just to congratulate and thank officers for that work, and that just to echo Councillor O'Neill's comments that I think it's the appropriate height for this area. When you look at the RL plan to show the heights of the other buildings along that stretch, it will fit in very well, and it will be a welcome addition to that area when it goes ahead. With that, if there's no one else looking to speak, we'll take a vote. All those in favour? Councillor Peter Young, are you for or against this one? That's fine. So 3-4 against. Sorry, and I was for as well. Forgive me for that. So that one is carried. So that's the resolution as part of 6.6. So what we're going to do is now go to 6.1 and make the necessary changes there. Okay, so Director, can we get confirmation that what we have up as a recommendation for 6.1 is what we need?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I believe the recommendation that's on the screen now will be identical to 6.6, except for items 1 and 2. Is that correct, Trina? Yes. Yeah. So we removed 1 and 2 because they referred to 6.6, referring back to 6.1. So that's now identical to 6.6.
Officers do apologise for this. Okay, so just so I make sure everyone is clear on that, is everyone's comfortable with what we're doing now, that 6.1 exactly reflects 6.6 apart from the first 2 points being removed? Everyone's cool with that? Okay, so Councillor O'Neill to move again, Councillor Owen-Jones to second. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Officers, thank you for that one. 6.2. Alex, good morning. Lara, good morning to you as well. Okay, presentation on 6.2. Jarvis.
Through the Chair, good morning councillors. Agenda item 6.2 relates to a material change of use for short-term accommodation at 70 Remembrance Drive, Surfers Paradise. More specifically, the proposal is for a new backpackers accommodation comprising 270 beds in a 135 bed bunk bed arrangement within the existing tenancy 2. The aerial on the screen identifies the subject site, while the image depicts the subject tenancy within the existing building. Historically, the tenancy involved the internal floor space for the Surfers Paradise Bowls Club, and the historic external bowling greens shown on the aerial in 4 quadrants are separately titled and do not form part of the application or consideration for this application. More broadly, to the north of the site, approximately 200 metres, is Cavill Avenue. Immediate south is the subsidiary inlet of canal of the Nerang River. Southeast, approximately 400 metres, is Q1, and west, approximately 1 kilometre, is the Home of the Arts. Under the city plan, the site is identified in the centre zone, which is further identified as the Surfers Paradise Specialist Centre. The tourist land use of short-term accommodation is subject to code assessment. The marked up site plan on the screen identifies the existing internal pedestrian connectivity to the external road network. I'll come back to pedestrian movement as a key consideration in a moment. The plan on the screen shows the ground floor, which includes the reception entry, common areas, storage and services. The second floor is a main habitable dorm area, which includes 135 pods comprising 270 beds, common kitchen area and amenities. The image on the screen is an example of the pods proposed, submitted from the applicant with respect to one of their existing operations in Sydney. The application has demonstrated compliance with the applicable assessment benchmarks of the city plan, noting its location within the Surfers Paradise Specialist Centre, which encourages tourism accommodation. Through the assessment, the two main considerations involve impacts of flood and the provision of car parking. So pursuant to the city plan flood overlay map shown on the screen, the site is identified as being subject to flooding during a range of flood events. As evident, the building is existing. There is no ability to totally avoid flooding impacts on the building for the adaptive reuse of this tenancy. Rather, it's to sensibly manage the operations before and during a range of floods. The applicant submitted a flood emergency management plan to identify the levels of risk associated with the tenancy and to identify the levels and to instill a range of control measures. A trained and certified flood management coordinator is required to be on site at all times. This would likely be staff members. The management plan involves opportunity for early evacuation to flood-free land, which is approximately 190 metres to the southeast, and shelter-in-place arrangements, and this is guests remain in the building when floodwaters are no longer safe to wade to refuge. It's not expected that floodwaters would inundate the site for more than 72 hours during the probable maximum flood. And the proposal will provide and will be certified to have provided, prior to the commencement of the use, sufficient food, water and fuel supply on level 1 from the commencement of its use. With the strategies in place, the proposal has demonstrated compliance against the flood overlay code. The site itself does not have any allocation for car parking. Car parking surveys of a similar establishment were provided by the applicant's traffic engineer, where it's been confirmed that the car parking demand would be no greater than 10 car parking spaces. While there is car parking on the street nearby, this is 3-hour regulated car parking and currently beyond its capacity. There are nearby private and public car parking facilities that are within the immediate and broader vicinity, as shown on the screen. Each of these facilities can be booked in advance. While officers have not obtained detail on nearby private car parking availability, the adjacent Bruce Bishop public car park is identified as being capable of supporting any such demand for the car parking. On balance, the car parking, albeit no spaces provided, has demonstrated compliance with the Transport Code, as use of the car parking facilities results in no actionable impact on nearby residents, while the site is well connected from the tenancy to the external pedestrian network. The code assessment land use for short-term accommodation is an envisaged activity within the centre zone, Surfers Paradise Specialist Centre. The use will provide affordable short-term stay accommodation opportunities for interstate and international visitors, supporting the city's tourist economy. Officers recommend that this application be approved, subject to conditions. Are there any questions?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Chairman. So what we've essentially got here is dormitory-style accommodation. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
So is dormitory defined as a land use, or is it a definition in the state regs?
Through the chair, no. The fit definition for it is short-term accommodation for tourists.
Okay, so we should be looking at the provisions for short-term accommodation in assessing this, not some nonsensical or non-existent dormitory provisions.
Through the chair, exactly right. In bounded assessment with the city plan. It fits the definition of short-term accommodation.
Thank you. Are you aware of any other buildings, residential buildings, where we have a flood depth marker installed within the building?
Through the chair, no.
So this will be novel. Why do we think that these backpackers will need bicycle parking space?
Through the chair, I mean, I acknowledge that it's tourists coming into the city, but there's bicycle spaces not just for backpackers, it's for staff, it could be backpackers wanting to hire a bike for their use whilst they're staying in the city. So.
But there's just 3 staff.
Yep.
So that's 3 bikes, but there's 21 provided or allocated. Are we being a bit harsh on them, requiring so many bicycle spaces? I mean, young people are just going to leave the bikes in the street. There's the Lime bikes. They're not going to pay for
Not just young people, Councillor Young.
Old young people like me.
Oh, yeah.
When I hire a bike, I just leave it in the street.
I get it.
Okay, Alex, do you want to have an answer to that one?
Yeah, through the chair, it's what the applicant proposed, so we didn't ask them to provide 22 car parking spaces. Oh, sorry, bike spaces.
And I might have missed it, but I just wonder if there's any mention in this report about fire, managing fire as a hazard, please.
So through the chair, ultimately that is a private certified matter that would be deferred to the later reclassification of the building.
So would be relying upon some unknown party to approve a fire system in the building, which is a dormitory for which there is no proper criteria as to what fire services there should be, I presume, because dormitory doesn't exist.
I mean, through the chair, they'd be reclassifying the building to, I understand it's a Class 3 reclassification from Class 5. So private certifiers, I don't know how their assessment of flooding impacts and fire impacts is progressed, but it is deferred to a certifier that holds a registration to reclassify these buildings.
Sorry, Peter, would you mind just quickly, Alex, could I, the 270 figure, and with regards to the fire certification that will come, is there a chance that as part of that process that figure is going to be reduced? Like the 270 is what the applicant proposed, but has that been verified by a certifier that can actually be handled in this space? Or is it possible that the fire certification is going to turn around and say you've got too many occupants in this many square metres?
Through the chair, I'll probably be careful not to want to comment on things that I'm not familiar with, but it would or could potentially, but yeah, I really
right. Anyway, you're not aware. That's an answer. Yeah. That's fine. Councillor Peter Young, do you have another question?
Yes, back to the car parking. So previously there was another land use here, a commercial land use. Did it have car parking provided?
Through the chair, I mean, yeah, historically it was a bowls club, and the bowls greens were to the north of this site. So car parking below it, yes, there would have been, but this is a separately titled site, a new application on a and it doesn't involve those spaces.
Right. Thanks, Chairman.
Other questions? Councillor Forster?
Thank you very much. Sorry, could I just get clarification on the issue of car parking? All other things being equal, what would the required number of car parking be for the effective number of bedrooms provided?
So through the chair, it is short-term accommodation is taken per bedroom. So officers have considered as per bedroom, so it would be 270.
Right, so usually 270 would be required, but am I right in understanding that the justification is that there are other off-street car parking facilities available, including Bruce Bishop Car Park? Could I just get a sense of, if Bruce Bishop was not there, and it had been divested, for example, and redeveloped, would that have affected the recommendation by city officers? Or is there sufficient car parking capacity elsewhere in Surfers Paradise to justify an outcome of a 270 space deficit?
Through the chair, it wouldn't have affected it. We would have considered that there's no immediate car park adjacent to the site. But as I said before, you can book in advance, so people timing their stay on the city can also book for those car parking spaces in advance before.
Have Councillor Owen-Jones and Councillor O'Neill.
So just on the car parking, the example on page 308 talks about the Tequila Sunrise similar backpackers operation. How much contact did the city officers have with that operator in the assessment?
I'll just ask Joel to come from Transport Assessment.
Thanks, Alex. Through the chair, we didn't have direct contact with the Tequila Sunrise. The applicant had an independent traffic engineer basically set up a survey that we reviewed, and that survey went to the operator to basically say, this is how many people are driving, riding, walking from the tram or from the coach.
So do you know whether or not the operator of the Tequila Sunrise is the applicant?
I believe that to be the case. They, when we asked for a survey, they said that they owned that particular.
So they completed a survey from another business that they own that confirms the car parking required for here?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Right.
Councillor O'Neill. Sorry. Is it on the back of Councillor Owen-Jones's question?
I think Councillor Owen-Jones will be able to answer it. He's probably the person within here. So through you, I'd ask him a question about car parking.
Let's do that.
If you don't mind. Councillor Owen-Jones, do you have a recollection as to our most recent decision on the Bruce Bishop car park? My recollection is that it's going to be reviewed by the new council in October next year or something.
So the decision, as I recall it, was that the city would continue to keep the asset, and that the review would be in regards to the funding that the city required in order to maximise its use as an asset. That was my understanding.
To be undertaken by the next council?
Well, and time framing puts it into the next council.
Thanks.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. I'm having difficulty getting my head around this application, I have to admit. Now that we've brought up the Tequila Sunrise, which is a similar, it was approved under the same sort of conditions, do you know?
Through the chair, it was approved under city plan through a code accessible application, yes. So
when we're talking about 270 beds, I don't know how many beds are in Tequila Sunrise, but it's a capsule sort of situation. So I'm imagining per square metre it's similar to this application?
Through the chair, yes, it was 185 beds approved as part of that. So similar.
Okay. All right. And was that a code accessible application, so it didn't come to committee?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Because my concern is, and I know we can't talk about, or can't do much about fire regulations, that's up to the private certifier, but I know in short-term accommodation where there's unit dwellings, the number of people is limited with the amount of bedrooms. For instance, if you've got a two-bedroom apartment, it's limited to 6 people in that two-bedroom apartment. So, it's a strange one, but thank you.
Councillor Owen-Jones.
Could I just ask about infrastructure charges and why the amount is 0?
Through the chair, infrastructure charges are 0. There's an exempt charge in the regime or in the infrastructure charge policy, and the application meets those exemptions. So it's an existing commercial tenancy that has the same GFA as approved. It's paid its infrastructure charges prior. There was a prior land use. So yeah, $0 charge.
And are we consistent in that in regards, so clearly there hasn't been an active land use in the property for more than 10 years. Are we consistent in the way that we manage those changes of land uses? So like, I mean, the original use never imagined there'd be 270 bodies camping overnight within the premise.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Andres, no, there wasn't 270 beds, obviously, with the Bowls Club using it, but our infrastructure charges group are pretty consistent with the way they've applied this policy, so this one does fall within that exemption under the city's charges resolution, so that's on page 336.
Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, you're our resident backpacker expert. Any questions? Councillor Patterson, any from you? No? I had a couple. No public notification period on this one, but there was some correspondence received. Can I just get clarification of what correspondence was received in regards to owner's consent?
Through the chair, the correspondence received was just with respect to the owner's consent and their understanding or their belief that it was unlawful owner's consent.
Okay, so and who was that correspondence from?
It was from residents in the building above.
So from residents or from the body corporate of the building above?
From residents.
Okay. So you didn't receive anything from the body corporate of the building above?
Through the chair, no other than the owner's consent.
Okay. Similarly, so in the correspondence received, there was, I'm guessing, concerns raised around amenity on existing residents. Can I get an understanding of how officers review that and what, if any, mitigation measures have been put in place?
Yep, through the chair. So it is an existing commercial tenancy. It's completely separated from the residents' entrance to the Surfers Plaza Resort. So that is one consideration. It removes that perceived amenity impact of the number of people walking through their own lobby. Additionally, the applicant submitted an acoustic report which undertook an assessment of nearby road traffic noise, its existing commercial tenancy and how it has been set up prior. And there are a number of recommendations limiting noise and hours of operation of the balconies.
Yep. So, Alex, on the balcony side of things, and where I think possibly I could understand why the residents above would have the main concern about noise and amenity. So that would be on the staff who are on site 24/7 to make sure that the balcony is not used after a certain time period. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. So no greater than, or not after 10 p.m. Doors are to be shut.
Councillors, any other questions? Very good. So I'm happy to move the item. Do I have a seconder on this one?
I'll foreshadow the refusal, Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So I don't have a seconder, so I don't have a motion to start with. So is it a foreshadow or just a change? Foreshadow? Yeah. Okay. So if we can mark it as lapsed for want of a seconder.
And this would need some work, but my basic reasons for supporting a refusal would be the density.
Right. So, Councillor Young, could I suggest, do you think if we had a 10-minute break, you could prepare some words and we can have them with the Minute Secretary?
Happy with that, Chair.
Very good. So 10-minute adjournment. Okay, we're back from our short break, and in that time, Councillor Peter Young has worked on some words which are up on the screen now. Councillor Peter Young, you happy with what you've got together?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I move what's on the screen, that the matter be refused, the proposal be refused for the reasons given, and they are principally...
So let me get a seconder first, and we'll come back and you can move. Eh? We have a seconder for the change recommendation. Councillor Owen Jones. And back to you, Councillor Young, to open.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm grateful for the assistance of the officers during the break and you giving us that opportunity to work on this, which I understand, if we were to pass this, would be further scrutinised by officers, and any additional wording provided before we go into council. But there's 3 reasons identified here for refusing this proposal. The first is about the density, which we acknowledge in the city plan. The density for the site is 6 beds per, I've got to find the right reference.
1 bed per 13 square metres.
Thank you for that. Yep. The city plan density identifies a residential density of 1 bed per 13 square metres, and what's been proposed here is 1 bed per 6 overall, that taking into account the other residential uses in the property, and that's a very high demarcation or difference from the city plan, in my opinion, too strong. Second is the complete lack of car parking for staff or clientele. It's acknowledged in the report that visitors might stay, the average visitation is 19 days for these kinds of accommodation, or I find it hard to believe that's what the report tells us. And it seems to me unlikely that every single person that might use this over a period of a year is going to come on a bus, on a plane, in a taxi, on a bike, not have their own car. I think a lot of young people do have a car and they travel around the country, and that's part of the independence of their lifestyle and holidaying. So the report identifies that there's no on-street car parking available in the precinct, and so there's a heavy reliance upon public car parking in the Bruce Bishop car park, which is a very uncertain provision. It might be okay for the next 6 months, might be okay for the next 12, but beyond that we really don't know, and it's unacceptable in my opinion. The third reason, and this is very much a heartfelt concern, we are, if we were to approve this land use, responsible for the ultimate safety of everyone that occupies that accommodation, and it concerns me greatly that any fire safety provisions would be completely the responsibility of a private certifier, unobserved by us, and we've got 270 lives here, and I don't think that we can dismiss from our minds the fact that occasionally fires do happen, and certainly in these kinds of accommodation, it's been known in Australia and overseas that fires do occur. So to me, that's got to be a very genuine concern for us, in that we don't have oversight. We're relying upon a land use or the use of a property that's not defined, and therefore the land use that the certifier will rely upon under the regulations will be short-term accommodation, and what we're providing here, what's been sought, is not typical short-term accommodation, it's dormitory. So it's a very different set of requirements that ultimately would be required, and we don't have oversight of that. Doesn't give me confidence. And those are the reasons that I've identified at this point in time. When we get to council, there may be others, but I'd be happy to listen to any debate. That's the end of my argument. Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not on this committee, so I'm not voting, but I would certainly support Councillor Young's recommendation. I just have one question on it. Through you to the officers, and I'd probably ask this to the City Solicitor before the council meeting, is whether point 3 is something that we can put as a reason that would be legally upheld?
So I think I'm happy if we just take that one on note, because I'm sure we'll get the city solicitor's input on this in general before full council, if you're cool with that. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Owen-Jones?
So I'll support the change recommendation, and one of the things that concerns me is around the transport code. I think that through past applications in regards to this property and its adjacent freehold titles, we're aware of the limitations on the Surfers Plaza Resort as it was originally approved in regards to the provision of car parking, and it does concern me that in a building where there is an existing 200 occupants without car parking, we would be proposing through an officer's recommendation a further approval for 270 people potentially to occupy a commercial space that was originally approved with car parking but now no longer benefits from that parking. So that's been on my mind. Clearly the applicant, Alfonso Abril, is an existing provider of these type of services. A cursory glance on the internet leads you to another premises that he has in Surfers Paradise and Adelaide, and because our reports are based on who the applicant is and who's provided consent, we're also aware that one of the owners that has provided the consent is a company called Creston, who, and I don't know whether or not they are still the owner, but at the time of making the application, they were the owner, and the mayor has previously made declarations in regards to an interest in Creston. So I say that in regards to the applicant is Alfonso, and he's put forward a proposal in regards to the business that he's in, but I'm mindful very much of the impact of any type of change of that commercial use in an area that doesn't have any available on-site car parking, and that's a major concern for me.
Councillor, is anyone else that wishes to speak for or against on this one? In that case, I'll close debate. All those in favour of the change recommendation? Against? It's just myself. Recommendation passed.
Be noted.
No, thank you. But I appreciate
Who's chairing this meeting?
But I appreciate the offer. Okay, Alex, thank you for that. We will move on to 6.3. Mr. Jukes, good morning. Just quickly before we jump into this one, can we just, between Nick and Mick and Lara, if there is any need to changes to that recommendation on the previous one before full council, can we make sure that's circulated to all councillors, not just committee members, before full council? Yep. Very good. Marvin, good morning.
Morning, everybody.
Presentation on 6.3?
Yep, correct.
Let's shoot.
Sweet, all right. Through the chair, this is a development application for a material change use for a multiple dwelling containing 54 units. The development application relates to 3 sites at 18 and 20 Bower Street and 10 Chester Terrace, Southport. This application has triggered impact assessment because the development is proposed above the building height overlay map for the site, which designates a height limit of 23 metres. The proposal has a building height of 30.8 metres. As shown on the screen, the subject site comprises 3 sites which will be amalgamated. The subject site forms the corner block, which has frontages onto Bower Street and Chester Terrace. The subject site has a site area of 1,551 square metres. Within the immediate locality, the subject site is in a periphery of a pocket of land within the medium density residential zone. It is in a unique location that converges with the boundaries of the low density residential large lot precinct to the south and the garden residential precinct of the Southport PDA to the north. The building heights within the immediate locality remain predominantly low-rise. However, it is noted by City Plan by virtue of the building height overlay map and the medium-density residential zone that City Plan seeks for a transition towards higher intensity developments within this locality. Within the surrounding area, the site is south of the Southport CBD, is east of Ferry Road, is southwest of the Broadwater Parklands, and is west of the Sundale Bridge. As previously mentioned, the proposal seeks to establish a building above the 23-metre height limit designated for the site, as shown in the above image. The proposal will have a building height of 9 stories at 30.8 metres. In the medium-density residential zone, City Plan allows the development to exceed up to 50% over the map building height of the site, subject to compliance with the strategic framework. Officer assessment has determined the proposal has demonstrated compliance with the relevant benchmarks of the framework. The following slides will show the perspective of the development, but first, notably, the development comprises of 54 residential units, has a building height of 9 stories at 30.8 metres, has a site cover of 72% at the ground level and 55% at the upper level, has 72 residential car parking spaces and 6 visitor spaces. Car parking is located on the ground and basement level. This slide shows the basement layout for the proposal where the majority of the car parking spaces reside. Please note the basement cutout within the northeastern corner of the building. This is for the retention of a large fig tree. This will be discussed later on. This slide shows the ground floor layout. In the northwestern corner is the site's primary road access onto Chester Terrace. Also note the ground floor communal recreation area within the northeastern corner of the site. This slide shows the typical floor layout for the building, which comprises a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. This slide shows level 8, which is the uppermost level of the building. The rooftop communal open space is located to the north, in the northwestern corner of the building. This slide here shows Bower Street from the southeast. Shows the development from Bower Street from the southeast. The left image here shows the development from the north, from the perspective of Chester Terrace, while the western image to the left shows the development from the west, from the adjoining property at 12 Chester Terrace.
Sorry, Marvin, can I interrupt you for a second? Just go back one slide.
Sure.
Would you just mind confirming on that one that just to demonstrate the building, they've removed the fig from
Yes.
the image of this one, but the tree at this end is retained as part of the proposal?
Correct. From this perspective, you would see a tree on the left side of the building, which is in the Bower Street Road Reserve, and there would be another tree on the corner truncation of the site further to the right.
Sorry, I just noted that in the report and wanted to make sure that we were clear that that one fig tree is still proposed to be retained there.
Correct. During public notification, 188 properly made submissions were received, consisting of entirely of objections. 153 of these objections were made by pro forma. 15 not properly made submissions were also received, entirely consisting of objections. Key matters raised during the public notification process related to matters relating to building setbacks and site cover, building height, character, residential density, car parking supply, shadowing, and traffic generation. With respect to the building height and appearance, the proposal has been assessed against the 50% uplift provisions of the strategic framework and are considered to comply. Officer assessment has concluded the proposal includes a high quality design, has a well-articulated facade, has appropriate setbacks and site cover, ensures privacy protection, and contributes to the aspirational character of the locality. Notably, the proposal will retain 2 significant fig trees out the front of the site. One tree is located within the Bower Street Road Reserve and is far enough away from the building to avoid being impacted by the development. The other is located on the corner of Bower Street and Chester Terrace within the corner truncation of the site. The proposal has been designed to include a basement cutout around the structural root zone of the tree. An arborist report has been provided by the applicant with technical recommendations on how the tree is to be retained. These requirements will be included within the conditions of approval. Officers have also recommended additional conditions to ensure tree protective measures are carried out during the construction phase. Additionally, officers have recommended conditions for a monetary bond payable for the protection of the tree during construction. The bond will be in the amount of $100,000 and will be held for a period of 12 months after the completion of all building works. Officers consider this bond to be appropriate for the development. In summary, Officers have undertaken a holistic assessment against the strategic framework. Assessment has determined the proposal fulfills the character aspirations of the zone and results in a high quality residential outcome. Further, the site is in a well-serviced location that supports the nature of the development proposed. Are there any questions?
Start with Councillor Owen-Jones and then Councillor Young.
Thank you. Could I just ask a question in regards to the canopy of the tree? And has it been trimmed from the adjacent boundary to the development site?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. If you turn to page 397 of your agenda, you'll see the figure 12 shows the tree, and that's facing west. And to the left of the image, you'll note that's where the existing house is, and the tree has been, I guess, historically pruned to avoid the existing building that's there.
And what constraints would be on a future body corporate in regards to the maintenance of that tree and the trimming of the canopy as it maybe re-establishes itself over time?
Through the chair, the conditions of the approval that we're hoping to get your support for run with the land. So any requirement on the developer will also apply to the future body corporate.
Which requires a body corporate to maintain the canopy as it re-establishes itself towards the building?
That is a matter for a arborist to assess what they can and can't do in terms of pruning to that tree. But there is a requirement on the developer and the body corporate to retain the tree in perpetuity.
Yeah, I suppose I was trying to think forward 2 or 4 years' time. Building's established, but the developer's long left, the bond's been released, and then the body corporate effectively is managing that interface between their building and the tree canopy and just making sure that our conditions effectively protect that tree canopy for as long as possible whilst it's a healthy tree.
Through the chair, as I've said, the conditions will run with the land, so they will apply. Perhaps to satisfy your ongoing and future concerns, we could add a property notification advising any rates on the rates card that there is a protection measures over the trees.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Chairman. In a related matter, I noticed that and you did say that the bond for the protection of the tree lasts for 12 months after construction. Is there a reason why we wouldn't make that a longer period, 5 years, for example?
Through the chair, that's standard practice in how we deal with these retention of tree conditions as a matter of standard practice.
And it's a good practice, and I can see that the applicant's gone to a lot of effort here to try to protect the tree, and that's, I'm sure, going to be very gratefully received by the local community. But I do have concern that in 5 years' time, the thing might be affected by changes to the water table or complications that we can't envisage. And it would be good to have some increased confidence that there'll be adequate provision. So is there a reason we couldn't extend that, or we couldn't transfer that bond and responsibility from the constructor to the owner?
Through the chair, there's no prohibition on council from doing or imposing such a condition, but we're just reminded that all conditions that we do issue under the Planning Act have to be reasonable and relevant. The bond is paid by the developer. We consider that a year for that bond to stay in place is appropriate, and then any future, maintenance of the tree is vested with the body corporate.
Okay.
So through you, Chair, to Peter, so the bond's effectively a financial instrument from the developer. So if they've sold out all of the development, they're going to want to be able to move on rather than be bound for 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's why I wondered if it might be transferred to...
And I don't know whether or not we have the ability to transfer it to a body corporate that hasn't been constituted yet. So, but I don't know whether or not we could have 12 months or like a bond that is 12 months or alternatively, 3 months after the sale of the last unit, which effectively might drag you out a little bit longer, but at least provide some finalisation for the developer. Did you just nod no? I'm mindful of it needing to be a relevant and reasonable condition, and the fact that it has to be anchored effectively to a development loan, but it will also be retired ultimately when the last unit's sold.
Yeah. Councillor Vorster.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It might come as a shock to many, but I love trees. And I love this one because its effective bag size is in excess of 400 litres, which is great. There is a question coming.
It'll be brief.
Go figure. Having read the report, I suppose I worry that there is insufficient strength in the proposed conditions and in the commentary to secure the future of the tree, insofar as the conditions seem to concern the retention of the tree during the course of construction. So, for example, under the, this is page, bear with me, 476. It says here, retained trees. The 2 Ficus obliqua, the small-leafed fig, really good bat fodder, I might add. Number T1 and T2 and the 4 water gums, as detailed within the arborist report and vegetation management plan, are to be retained and not damaged during construction works. So, I mean, I think it's arguable, given the way that that sentence is structured, that we're talking about retaining these during construction works and maintaining them. And I don't think there's a permanence around their location. While I assume that there's a vegetation management plan that has been submitted, I don't know that that has been, well, it's certainly not incorporated in the body of the report. And I just wondered whether city officers might think it a reasonable thing to do to actually more explicitly call out the enduring retention of that tree post-construction, and more importantly, put an obligation on the body corporate to maintain that tree in accordance with the prevailing Australian standards, as we have done in the past. Because my worry is, as Councillor Owen-Jones alluded to, if the body corporate exercise their current rights to trim the canopy of that tree over their wall, effectively, what you'll end up with is an imbalance in the canopy, right? Because you'll have branches growing out across the road reserve. You won't have compensatory or balancing weight over the private property, and then you might end up losing the tree altogether because it becomes structurally unsound. So would it be fair and reasonable to strengthen that condition to require the tree to be maintained by the body corporate in accordance with the prevailing Australian standard?
Through the Chair, I'll take that question in 2 parts, and the first being with regard to the wording in the condition. We could look at an alternative wording that refers to or puts a requirement on the retention of the tree in perpetuity or something like that. With regard to the pruning, I'll have to defer to our council's arborist who's here today to speak to council about, I guess, future pruning works.
Mr Chairman, and while we're getting that feedback, it's not without precedent. We've often referred to these arboricultural standards captured in the Australian standards in similar conditions, in conditions for similar developments. If it is supported and we can get there with strengthened conditions, I think it's also important to flag that as an information notice on future rates, because there will be people who purchase a lower apartment in close proximity to the fig tree, and they should know that in the fullness of time, in 10 or 20 years, that they might have some encroachment into their view by the growing canopy.
City Arborist, you want to go with it?
Okay. Through the Chair, I'd just like to respond to your question there. Regards to the ongoing pruning and maintenance of the tree, it will be a responsibility of the body corp to maintain that tree. Any pruning works is classed as damage under our veg code, and will require an application to council for that approved work to happen. A council officer will attend the site, inspect the site, have that conversation with the applicant, which would be the body corp, their concerns, and address those concerns. but we'll dictate how and the amount of pruning is to take place.
Thank you for that answer. Mr Chairman, to you then perhaps, I mean, I'd still prefer a strengthened condition that referred to the standard, but if there's no support for that, at the very least an information notice to the effect of the advice that we've been provided, I think would be necessary.
Mick, just so we don't try and push to come up with words today that we then have to change at full council possibly, would committee be happy if we just said for now that you've got the intent, I think, of what all committee members are interested in? If a change to that particular wording could be provided before full council and we can enter it into full council. Committee members, you're happy with that approach? Cool. So we'll shoot back to questions. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. So in the report, you've acknowledged that this is the first proposal in this locality that's seeking the 50% uplift. And I just do want to say a very big thank you to the team for your work with all the submitters and the residents, and particularly Mr Moran for meeting with, it was at least over 60, 70 residents who requested a meeting on these matters. I note that with the specific outcomes to achieve that 50% uplift, 4 of the 8 of them refer to these trees. And one of them, particularly the reinforced local identity and sense of place, would not be achieved without those trees. So I'm really grateful to hear the concerns from the committee and their commitment to a strength around those conditions. So my question, my understanding is that there is some debate, and even though $100,000 may seem like a large number, that there's originally considerations of a number more like 250,000 would be appropriate for a tree of this scale. And I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Through the chair, the reference to $250,000 I think came up during a conversation that we've had about the application. Officers have recommended $100,000 on the basis that we consider it is reasonable for the scale and type of development that is proposed, and it's proportionate. We are of the view that it provides a disincentive to, I guess, do any works that will damage or, prohibit the tree's ongoing health and maintenance. So we're quite satisfied with the $100,000 figure.
With a follow-up with that, so if I can just, so through our discussions and again on site when we were there with residents yesterday afternoon, I get the impression that first item of the local identity and sense of place would not be achieved without these trees.
Through the chair, that's a difficult question to answer because they have proposed to keep the tree, and that's how we've assessed the application. Yep. And I would say that it does add merit. Mm-hmm. However, the 50% uplift also applies to the building itself. And as you can see through the perspectives and our assessment within the report, the building itself does provide an excellent standard of appearance and is consistent with the aspirational character of what council and city plan is trying to achieve in this location.
Yeah, I appreciate it does both of those things, but with regard to the local identity and sense of place, it was the trees that really kind of cemented that. So,
sorry, just Councillor Patterson, but just I think, Liam, were you trying to get at that it wasn't necessarily that tree that reinforces local identity, it's that it's well landscaped and has that greenery is the local identity part of it, not necessarily that specific tree? I think just to make that point clear.
No, it's
not. Through the chair, the point I'm trying to make is that the tree was definitely a significant factor for our assessment, and its retention, I guess, gave weight to us lending support for the proposal, but it wasn't the only reason. We had other reasons, like I've just discussed about the building quality and the location of the development, that also lend support to the development meeting those provisions in the strategic framework.
Yeah, and again on that, I'm quite grateful for the officers working with the applicant to get it to a stage where it's more suitable. But I would, I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, hit us with a question.
Just had two, Chair. Just one on the, obviously I love trees as well, but I'm just
we all
wondering if
love
the,
trees.
I'm just
We're on the
wondering if the building design, I guess, has accommodated the future growth of the tree in the sense of obviously 20, 30 years time, roots and things expand, structural damage to the building. Just because I've had there's a similar building that we've been working through with many of these offices where similar application 30 odd years ago, the tree's grown, it's now causing significant structural damage to the building where it's costing a lot of money for the body corporate to maintain the tree in its current state under all the appropriate rules and regulations. I'm just wondering, is that going to be a similar situation here where the tree will continue to grow as they do, and then there'll be a strong pushback, I guess, from the tenants at that
So
time?
who wants to talk tree protection zones?
The arborist. I will pick the
Phil, I mean, it's good.
Good morning to you, Mr Spears.
Good morning, everyone, and sorry, don't want to contribute to a cast of thousands, but I was involved in that recent discussion there with Councillor Bowden-Lumsden. Through the chair, the comment I would make is that trees are, they're dynamic and they do change over time. It's really difficult to make decisions or recommendations at a point in time now that would 100% encapsulate situations in 30 or 40 years' time. That particular situation, Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, as you're aware, but just to fill the rest of the group in, that tree in question that we were discussing was estimated to be around 80 to 100 years old. But the great outcome there was that under council arborist recommendation, there are good prospects for retaining that tree whilst it interacting with services in the building. So yeah, my personal view, and I'm not an arborist, Phil might add to this from a technical perspective, but on the basis of that situation and the fact that there were paths forward that didn't involve removing that tree, the retention of this tree, decades after we're not going to be around anymore, there's, in my view, very good prospects to that.
Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, you happy with that response?
I think that covers it. That it's obviously very hard to properly forward plan for what trees may or may not do in the future. I just, as I said, didn't want there to be a situation where there's a big pushback on council because there's tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to continue maintaining and repairing. Yep. That was all.
Fair point. Councillor Neal.
So I was just going to add one more thing, if that's okay, Mr Chairman. This would be reviewed in the future.
Yes, man.
Sorry?
Didn't say yes.
Oh, I thought you did a slight nod. I must have missed it.
Like I'm going to stop you.
These are not stuck in concrete forever in the sense that, council officers, I was going to say me, but in 30 years' time, I don't know what I'll be doing. My equivalent in 30 years' time would review whether the retention of that tree is appropriate with respect to damage to infrastructure, interaction with the building. We don't say forever, no, sorry, you can't touch it. That 30-year-old approval makes it stay there. We would review as appropriate in the future.
Okay, is there more questions on?
I was going to move the item.
Okay, we're just, Councillor Neal, were you a question?
No, but I'll second there.
Okay, all right. So before we get to that, I did have just a question in regards to, on page 464 in the response to submitters, there's an example given of what the original building that was applied for looked like. I was just looking for a bit more information from officers. Like, obviously, I can see the main changes, but could you give me an overview of, through the negotiation process, and it appears to be very much based on the strong submitter feedback, what changes have been made to the building in terms of facade treatments and landscaping changes?
Through the chair, I will defer to Council's architect, Tim Devine.
Thank you. Through the chair, city officers worked with the applicant in regards to the building appearance and its interface to neighbouring development. So firstly, with the podium form, to introduce some greater depth and movement within the podium form in addition to landscaping, including with the medium-rise building form, officers had the opinion that the building lacked texture, and the applicant introduced some additional texture through the brickwork, which responds to the local area where there's some brickwork seen within buildings, including some additional fine-grained detailing of screens and hoods. So on balance, officers were comfortable that the building provided an excellent standard of appearance and the applicant made sufficient changes to meet those outcomes.
Very good. My second question, if we can try and fit someone else up here. I was just interested in traffic's assessment in regards to Chester Terrace and traffic volume and safety concerns raised by submitters around the intersection and whatnot, if we could get a bit more context on what your findings were.
Mr. Chair, the existing volume on Chester Terrace from a daily perspective is around 1,900 vehicles per day at the moment. It's a residential collector, so it's designed for 3,000 a day. The proposed development will add about 300 to that, so it's still remaining well below capacity. I think one of the other matters in relation to Chester that was raised by submitters was in relation to vehicle speeds. So we do actually have data, council data, which was collected immediately adjacent to the subject property where their access driveway will be. And that showed, so it is an unposted road, so it means that it's got a 50k per hour speed limit, and the average speed is 40 k's per hour with an 85th percentile speed of 47.6 kilometres per hour, so largely compliant in terms of speeds.
Through you to Councillor Patterson, your understanding of what submitters' concerns were in regards to traffic was about volume, or was it the concern around speeding or sight lines? What was the concern that you understood to be?
All of the above. But the biggest one is the amount of traffic and the volume. And again, through you, Chair, I thank you for meeting on site and going through that. And it was curious, and perhaps if you could just speak to the committee on that consideration of, yes, we're at 1,900, there's a capacity for 3,000, we've got 300 likely to come if this proposal is approved, and this is the first of its kind in this area. So a lot more is, so you'd say, okay, if there's another 4 approvals, then we would be, and I know that's not for something to be considered today, but I'd just like for comment on it, because it does seem strange that we've got a street that's considering this kind of build the whole way along it, but if they do that, then by your numbers, it would be exceeding traffic. Could you please comment on that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think we have to take each application on its own merits and look at the situation as it currently exists. And that current situation is there is ample capacity at the moment to accommodate this development. I suppose that is a consideration of each development proposal as it comes through.
That's right. It's a fair point, Councillor Patterson. I think we understand what you're getting at with it. So, any further questions? I have a mover in Councillor Owen Jones and a seconder in Councillor O'Neill. To open, Councillor Owen Jones.
So I'd just like to start by saying on behalf of Councillor O'Neill and myself that we love trees as well.
Yeah.
And that we accept the fact that the office is maybe going to come back to us at council with a little bit of tightening that sees the further protection of that tree long after the developer is gone, but being mindful of the fact that trees grow and trees die. So what we want to do is protect it for as long as possible, because part of the charm of this particular area is the kissing canopy and the ability of those trees to add to the streetscape. So I think it is interesting that there was a volume of submitters who showed enough concern to put it in writing. I think that there was 130 odd pro forma ones, which indicates that they got together as a group and gave it some thought. And clearly, if they read the report, they'll benefit from the officers having stepped through each of their concerns and addressing them. The traffic concern is one that comes up a fair bit, particularly as areas transition and change, and this is the first of this type of development in this immediate precinct. But I think that the officers have done a pretty good job in arriving at their recommendations today.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. This has been a really special and interesting proposal for the local community. It is perhaps one of the oldest areas of the coast, and it's one that people really value and treasure the character of that area. It is a shock to residents when they see it all at low res, effectively, getting their heads around that this is something that is intended and proposed. And again, I do want to thank the officers for their work in working with residents along that journey. I do still think that we should be really sending a message about that element that is so vital to the character, being these Moreton Bay figs. And if you want to see something fun, you should go see that tree at Halloween time. The local community covers it from head to toe. But I would be asking through you, Chair, to Councillor Owen-Jones, whether he would consider increasing the bond to $250,000, which I think, given the scale of the total value of this development and given the importance on this to achieve the uplift, would seem a reasonable.
So we're in debate, but I'll allow the question. So Councillor Owen-Jones, your thoughts?
So I think the simple answer is no, but though the officers are going to come back to us between now and council with some tightening of that, and if between now and then you can come up with a reasonable argument as to why it should more than double, and I'd actually prefer to see it not increase in volume but extend in time, but I'd be mindful of it not extending too far past the logical transfer of responsibility from a developer through to the body corporate. So I think there's a balance there, but my gut feeling is 250 isn't the answer.
So I'd agree with that. I think there's a chance at full council to make those changes if we see fit. But did you have anything more to say, Councillor Patterson, and for or against on this one? Cool. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I love trees too, and I would certainly support an increased level of that bond. I think it is appropriate, and it's not unreasonable. But we'll debate that at council. Just indicating my support for that at this point. What I perceive here is that there is a concerned community, and I understand that nobody likes change, but what is apparent is that there's been quite a lot of work to try to address the concerns that were raised and mitigate those problems. What I also see is something that seems quite closely akin to what we anticipated in our amendment package, in which the state government refused and rejected because it was undesirable, unachievable, unaffordable, whatever else they come up with. And I think that this is probably a good trendsetter, so to speak, for this vicinity. I'll be supporting the proposal. Thanks.
Councillor Vorster, Councillor Baden-Lumsden, Councillor O'Neill, anything to say on this one?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just another good example of a local councillor engaging with their community and making a contribution in chamber that can, take advantage of our open and persuadable minds. I hadn't spoken with Councillor Patterson prior to this meeting about this DA, but hopefully the comments around the tree and retention of it haven't been too off the mark. I know change can be confronting for neighbourhoods, and this is not without precedent on this particular block, but I actually quite like the look of this building. I think architecturally it presents really well, and I think it provides a pretty sympathetic interface to Southport, both with the retention of the tree but also that brick-style stenciling to the adjacent home. I thought it's actually one of the better buildings I've seen come through in a medium density zone. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor O'Neill? Yeah. Councillor Baden-Lumsden, anything from you on this one? So just before I go to Councillor Owen-Jones to close, I think it's worth saying thank you to the submitters on this one, not just in the sheer amount of submitters, but also in the quality of the submissions that came in, also on how they've conducted themselves. So I have been contacted by several submitters, and I know Councillor Patterson's had a lot of dialogue with a lot of individuals, but I found them to be very respectful and very interested in listening to opinions and listening to officers' input. I think a thank you to Mick for attending the town hall meeting that Councillor Patterson organised. I think every single one of the people I've spoken to raised that as being a great thing to have someone prepared to come along and answer questions face to face. When we talk of the missing middle in terms of infill development in our city, I think this is a prime example of what that looks like. This is the kind of product that we need to achieve our dwelling targets in this city. I believe it's the kind of product, with the changes that have occurred through negotiation on built form and landscaping, that will add to the character and identity of an area in the future. Really excellent work by officers. It is obvious through the report and obvious in the detail back to submitters there has been a lot of negotiation with the applicant, and it would appear the applicant's done that in good faith and understanding that they are trying to achieve a social licence to be the first of this kind of development in the area. And hopefully they do everything that they're saying they're going to do, and they do protect that tree. And we look forward to some suggested wording from officers around some stronger words on that particular condition and a review of the bond amount before full council. Councillor Owen-Jones, to close. Very good. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried. Thanks, officers. All 100 of you. Yeah, we're running out of time, sorry. We'll have to move. Okay, we move on to 6.4.
So can I just confirm our current quorum? Do we have quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That is the understanding I have.
You going to ask for presentation?
We would, and I would strongly.
I mean, I've had my presentation from city officers.
So, I have too. Yep.
So I'm happy to move it with that amendment. You're okay?
All right. We'll jump to that there. So I'll just check. Is there any other councillors that were interested in a presentation on this one? Okay. Cool.
What's actually supposed to be called Merrimack? I thought it was
Are we?
And I'm impressed with how many references to Southern Gold Coast are in this report.
This is not the. This is the central Gold Coast, isn't it?
Well, geographic centre, but it's the centre of gravity to the south.
I was actually impressed.
All the way to the northern rivers.
I was actually impressed with the fact that the report didn't say south.
Okay, the kids are getting restless. Let's move on. Councillor Vorster doesn't need a presentation. He's had his, and I've had one as well from officers. Councillor Vorster does have a proposed change. Councillor, are officers aware of that one?
Yeah, it's in the Chamber support inbox.
All right, so we'll get that up on the screen and just make sure that the manager and director are all over it.
What's going on?
I just want to make it clear when we go to community consultation, effectively, that the issues of infrastructure and uplifted development are actually quite separate.
All right. So, Councillor Vorster, where is your proposed additional wording going
So
in?
it would add a 7, and I think I've got a typo in there, but it's that the community engagement plan be updated to more clearly set out that the infrastructure deficit in the area, which is canvassed in the report, and invite, not invited, community feedback on what infrastructure needs. On what infrastructure needs to be delivered to support any case for uplift in the developable potential of the area.
Okay,
and
so we'll change
have a talk
invites.
to that.
Could I second it so that he can speak to it?
You absolutely can. Okay, can I just check quickly? Roger, Catherine, no concerns with that additional wording? That's all workable for you guys?
Through the chair. It's the challenge for us is just where we fit it into the
engagement strategy that we've prepared. So we've got key messages and content in the strategy. So it's just how we weave it into that work. So I think we'll be able to.
Yep. So, but in terms of wording, you can work with that.
Yeah, I
Councillor
think
Forster?
we might have to massage some of the words, but yeah.
Okay. So maybe as an undertaking, before full council, can Councillor Forster and Richard and Catherine have a chat about just making sure we've got the exact words to meet what Councillor Forster's intent is, but also what officers can work with inside, if we can do that.
Yeah, and Mr Chairman, if I can open it, probably provide a bit of context to city officers now. But look, over the last, 8 years, we've had many discussions in this room, twofold discussions actually, one about the potential for Robina to help deliver housing and economic activity, but two, also acknowledging the incredible infrastructure constraints. And those constraints really have to do with the way in which the road network was laid out at the foundation of the suburb, when the suburb was there to cater for a population within a much more confined catchment than we have now in the lived reality. Any other CBD, you would have a grid road system, for example, that would give us more opportunities of protecting and preserving road corridors and using, roads in new and novel ways, for example, providing a light rail connection. But we've got this incredibly difficult ring road and collection of roundabouts that at certain times of the day grind the precinct down to an absolute halt. So I think it's important that when we present the community with the opportunity to uplift height and density, and there are some areas that are proposed to go up to 15 stories and higher in Robina, we make it clear to them that our appetite to deliver more opportunity in Robina is connected with a desire to deliver infrastructure to support that uplift and not to compound the problems that exist today. And that is not to say that that infrastructure will fall to the council or to the ratepayer to deliver, and I think that's critically important. But while we're working with the state government on the Olympic Games village and their desires to deliver the balance precinct as a mixed use, mixed use utopia, that we actually say to them, in exchange for these uplifted property rights, you will be on the hook for a contribution to this economic hub. And that could look like protection or delivery of a future light rail spur, progression of the east-west rapid bus transit link, or it could be significant investment into the M1 interchanges, which are actually strangling the road network at the moment. So I think the community should be able to get behind a new 40-year vision, but I think the community should also be able to name their pound of flesh or measure their pound of flesh from the state. And hopefully this little tweak will capture that in the consultation process.
Very good. So move Councillor Forster, second Councillor Owen-Jones. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Forster, anything else to say? We'll take that as closed.
As closed, thank you.
Very good. In that case, all in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you for that one. That's the end of our items. Any GB items that I wasn't aware of, which would be naughty?
Something we could only discuss in closed session. I'm sorry not to forewarn you, Chairman, but I wonder if I could move to closed session so we might discuss a matter, because discussion in open session would be prejudicial to council.
So just in wondering, there's no item to attach it to, so is it a GBI you want to try and do in closed?
Yeah,
okay,
that's correct.
So I'm going to have to just check here quickly, but don't we need to introduce the GBI wording before we could go into closed? I don't think we can go into closed without it, can we?
I just did.
I think you can.
That we move to closed for the reason that discussion in open session would be prejudicial to council's
for a legal matter?
Position, yeah.
Okay. So there is going to be a GBI at the end of this part?
Potentially.
Potential?
Yep.
Okay.
Once we go to close, I will seek to introduce a GB item, Chairman.
Only so I don't really put my foot in it on my first day up here. Can I just check?
No, I should have spoken with you earlier.
That's okay, but could I just check any concern with how that is done, Councillor Owen-Jones, in terms of a flow of process?
So if you, alternatively, you could adjourn it and we can have a conversation and then come back. But it's up to you.
No. So I'm happy on that. Then we'll move into closed for the reasons being that, so I'll second we move into close, and the reason being that because of legal matters. That can be, we can fill that in afterwards. So all in favour to move into closed? Councillor Vorster, how are you voting?
I'm always standing with you.
Very good. Move into closed. All those in favour? Thank you. Very good. So as a result of that, that's all right. As a result of that conversation, we don't have a GBI that we're going to introduce today. So that brings us to the end of our meeting, being there no other matters. Can we say a thank you to Lucy and the other officers today for, there was a bit of stuff around today, so good work with that. Really well done. Thank you for your attendance today and working with me. And yes, goodbye Tanya, goodbye William, goodbye Matthew. I'll see you at home soon.
You've done a good chairing job, Tanya.
Meeting closed 11:16.